In this episode, we're going to be working on the navigation menu. It isn't 100% complete, but I would say it is about there. We are just missing the footer, but we'll get to that in future episodes to come. So if you're following along with us, in this part, we're going to be working on the navigation. And to get started, let's go ahead and go to our components folder and create a new file and call it navigation.js. And as always, we'll want to create the React component and just capitalize navigation. We're going to work the similar way we've been doing it, where we build out the styled components and then add its functionalities. We'll need to import some global styles. So I'll make a comment for the styled component section, and we're going to import our container as well as our flex. And then in the JSX, let's go ahead and create a nav component. What do you call these components? Because they're styled components or style tags, I don't know. But yeah, so create the nav one. Then we're going to add a container, and inside the container, we're splitting it up into 3 different sections. Don't forget to add the comma next to container and flex. But in the container, like I mentioned, 3 different sections. So we have the nav header, and then we have the nav list, and finally the nav footer. Inside the nav header, we'll add a flex. And for its property, we're going to give it a space between property, as well as a no height property. Then we're going to have an H2 that will say projects and a close nav. And this will be that X button to close the nav. Inside the closed nav, it would be similar to the hamburger menu. So we'll have 2 span tags. And inside nav list, here's where we're going to list out all the projects. We're going to have an unordered list and then a list item. And inside that list item, there will be a link for Gatsby link. And this link would link us to the projects. So it'd be /projects and then the project name, depending on whatever project we're hovering on. So I will only make 1 list item, and then we will construct the data and map through the data to list out the different projects. And then we have a div with the class name of link. And inside link, we'll have a span tag with the class name of arrow. And inside the arrow, we'll have an SVG for our arrow. Now to grab the SVG for the arrow, what we're going to do is go into our assets, SVG, social icons.js, and copy what I have here for the SVG. This is the arrow icon for reference. So we'll go ahead and paste that in there, get rid of the comments, and save it so it could format. Now outside of this arrow span, we are just going to have the title. So the first title will be not humble. Now we're going to leave nav footer for later. So let's work on the styled components and then get back to nav footer. Create a new file in the styles folder and name it navigation styles. And similar to all the other styles, we're going to import styled components as well as import motion from framer motion. And the first component we're going to create is the nav. So we'll do a nav, and we'll say styled.div. And we'll make these motion components at the end of the video. So let's just build them out, and then we'll add motion to them. So the position of this one is going to be fixed. We're going to have a top of 0, a left of 0, a width of 100%, a height of 100%. The display is going to be set to block. Our background color is going to be that red. So go ahead and use our props. The color, we can set it to black for now. Our Z index is going to be set to 100, and our overflow will be set to hidden. Next, we've got the nav header. So we could say nav header is equal to style.div. And let's actually preview what we've got so far. So right now it's going to be empty because we are not adding the navigation to the layout.js. So let's go to layout.js and we'll import navigation from our components folder and navigation. So let's add navigation after our header here. So we could just drop navigation like so. And if we preview, we're going to get errors for all the ones we haven't defined yet, but that's fine. I think what we could do is similar to what we did before. So let us first define all the components, and then we'll get back to it. So we've got the nav header, then we've got the close nav, our nav list, and the nav footer. So let's save this and then import them into our navigation.js. And we could import all of this. So nav container, nav header. We don't need flex. Flex is there. So close nav and nav list. I made a mistake. We don't need container because container is global. So nav list and nav footer. And we're importing this from the navigation styles. Let's save that and preview. Link is not defined in here, so we need to import link from Gatsby. And we could just say import link from Gatsby. Save that. And now if we refresh, the navigation is not displayed. I think we had one more error. What was the error? Props is not defined in the navigation styles. So let's look at navigation. We need to add props as the function. Okay, so this is what we have. Not pretty, but it's something, right? We've got the projects, the hamburger menu, or that menu span, the arrows, and yeah. So let's keep going actually, because this does not look good at all. We're gonna work on the nav header now. The nav header is going to have a top of 72 pixels, a position set to relative, and an H2, where its color would be the background color of whatever our current theme is. So set the background color there. Next, for our close nav, the button is going to have a transform origin of center, a border of none, a padding of 20 pixels, a background color of none, an outline of none, and the span tags inside the button will have a width of 36 pixels, a height of 8 pixels, a display set to block, a background similar to what we had for our H2. So the background is going to be based on the background theme color. Let me scroll down a bit. And then finally, we're going to give it a margin of 8 pixels. So save that. Let's preview what we have. And so we've got our projects on the top left and our hamburger menu here to close it. I think we'll come back to this to make it look like a closed hamburger menu rather than a hamburger menu, because I think that's what on the original mock, but we'll check that out after we're done. Next, for our nav list, we're going to set the height and the width to 100%, a display set to flex, as well as align items to center. Inside the nav list, we have an unordered list with the padding set to 0, and a list item inside the unordered list with the list style set to none, the font size set to 3 rem, the text dash transform set to uppercase, a font weight, let's set that to 900. The height of our list items are going to be 96 pixels, as well as our line heights. Let me scroll this down. As well as the line height. The line height will equal the height, so it's going to be 96 pixels as well, with an overflow set to hidden. Now inside the list item, we did have a div with the link class name, so we'll do a .link, and we'll set the color of that to the props background color, like so. We're gonna give it a position of relative, a display set to flex. We're gonna align items to center, and inside the link we have that arrow class, which represents the parent of the SVG. Set the height to that to 76 pixels, and a margin right set to 8 pixels. Let's save this and preview what we've got so far. So we've got this working with the not humble, and the arrow is not visible, so let's look for that arrow. So if we hover here, inside link we have arrow, and arrows being hidden to the left. So the link itself has an overflow of hidden, or sorry, the list item has an overflow of hidden, and the arrow is going to be hidden on the left side. It's hard to tell because my cursor is red at the moment, but we'll change that later on. Now inside the dot arrow, we can access the SVG, set the width to our SVG to 100 pixels, and let's change the color. So the path is going to have a fill of the background theme. So let's copy that, set the fill to our path to the background theme, and let's preview. So now we've got the arrow working. And so with framer motion, what we do is we hide the arrow, and then when we hover, we will expose the arrow and move it to the right. We'll get to that towards the end. Lastly, we have our nav footer, but we haven't coded our nav footer out yet, so we'll get to that in a second. What I wanted to do is create the routes so that we could add all the routes, including not humble. Rather than making them static, let's make it dynamic and have an array that will contain the routes. Back in navigation.js, we're going to create a nav routes array, and this will contain all the routes. So the first object, or a typical object, would have an ID of 0. The title will be the not humble. Our path for the Gatsby link would be, oops, not an equal sign, but the path will be a / not dash humble. And we're also providing a video that is linked to the title or the path. So what we're going to say is our video, and then we'll just name the title of our video. So for this one, it's called featured-video.mp4. So the place that featured video mp4 is coming from is inside our assets. We have a video folder with all the videos that we need to build the site. And so related to whatever we hover on, I am passing a video just so that we can know whichever one we hover to display the correct video. We're going to do this 5 more times. So let's copy and paste this again. And for this one, we're going to have an ID title of 1, and then it's going to be called bleeping easy. And we don't need to capitalize not humble because we'll do that in CSS. So if this was actually coming from a database, it would not be capitalized. Bleeping easy. And so the path is also going to say bleeping-easy. And the featured video is going to be easy.mp4. Now I'm going to skip because this is just redundant now. You can pause where I finish and then just copy everything that I've written. So I finished adding all the nav routes, and what you could do is just pause and make sure that yours matches mine. Essentially what's happening is that we're listing all the project titles with the paths and the correct video source. So like I said, just pause the video, make sure it matches whatever you have on your screen, and then we'll be good to go. Now what we'll do is take nav routes and map it in our nav list. So each route is going to have a list item like I highlighted here. So what we can do is create some space just to map throughout the array. We'll do nav routes dot map, and we'll pass in route, and in here we'll return the list item. So copy everything here and paste it in and save. If we preview, it's going to have not humble 5 different times, but here's where we're going to add that dynamic data. And the first thing we want to do is for the list item, we're going to give it a key. What we could do is we can give it route.id, since our ID for each specific object is different. Next, for our link, we can change this to have a more dynamic link. We can say we can use backticks, and so we can write projects / route.path, and this will be project dependent on the path we defined in the array. Everything else is going to stay the same except this not humble. This will change to route.title. Let's save this and preview. So now we have not humble, bleeping easy, make it 0, and all of them have dynamic routes, so that's good. Back in our project, I decided we're actually going to wait on Nav footer. We're not going to build it out in this episode, just because it reuses a lot of what the initial footer or the homepage footer is. So what we're going to do is build out the footer on the homepage and then just reuse that footer component to display it here. I just don't want to build it twice, so there's no point of this just yet. What I do want to work on, however, is the nav video section. So underneath nav footer, let's create a component and call it nav videos. And inside nav videos, we'll have a div with a class name of reveal. And then as a sibling to the reveal, we're going to have another div with the class name of video. And then inside this video div, what we're doing is providing a video tag with a source. So what I'd like to do right now is just sort of explain how this is going to work. Back in our site here, what happens is that when we hover on a specific link, a video appears and it shows you what video that's being displayed specific to the project. So the theory here is that we have state that houses whichever link we're hovered on, as well as the video to display. And then when we hover on a specific item, it's going to update the state to update whatever video source or video we should display. This means we need to create a state that will house whichever video is playing, as well as what the link is being hovered on. So in our project, we can bring in useState. And if we scroll back down here, we'll want to create that state. So we'll say const reveal video and then set reveal video. We can say useState. And what we'll pass is a few different properties. So we'll say show is false, and we'll say video, and this will be whatever video source we have. As default, let's go ahead and add the first video. So we'll say featured.video, or sorry, featured-video.mp4, and our key is going to be 0. So let's save this. What I'm thinking is that the initial video will always be featured video, and whatever we hover on will require us to update the state with the video and with the key to display whichever one we want, as well as changing show to true. That way we could show the video. Now to work on the styles part, we'll switch show to true just for now so that the video can always show. And in the video source, we will say require, and we are just going to access the assets folder, video, and for the video name, we're going to access whatever is in the state. So we'll say reveal video.video. So this should only show us the featured video. We're also going to pass in a loop and an autoplay, just so that the video can loop and autoplay. So we've got a few warnings and errors. It says nav video is not defined, and that's because we haven't built it yet. We can jump into our navigation styles and work on that. Underneath the nav footer, we're going to have a nav videos. And nav videos is going to have an absolute position. Top's going to be 0. Bottom is going to be 0. Left is going to be set to 25%. A z index of -1. Height is going to be 100%, and the width is also going to be 100%. Our background color is going to be set to a black color. And then we have that reveal, and what reveal does is it's going to be a red background that will decrease in width just to show the video. The width is going to be 100% so that it could cover the video which is in the background. Our background color is going to be red, so we can copy this props and then change the background to just red. Position will be set to absolute. Then we have a top of 0, a bottom of 0, and a left set to 0. And then we also have a dot video with the background set to black, a position set to absolute, a height of 100%, a margin set to 0, a z index set to -1, and then a video tag which will have a height of 100%. Let's save this, and if we preview our project, we still have nav videos as undefined, and that's because we need to import it. So let's go ahead and do that. Again, make sure you're always importing your styled components depending on where your style sheet lives. So right now we could see that we have a background video here playing, and I think that's because we need to increase the amount of percentage we have set to left. But reveal is attempting to hide it. If we say reveal is going to have a width of 0, it will then show the video. And so the idea is, let's add a transition real quick. So we'll do a 0.3 seconds, ease. We'll just leave it ease. So changing the width from 0 to 100%. And so when we hover, that's what we're really going to do, is just set the width back to 0 to reveal the video. But I think right now the issue is for our navigation, for our nav videos, we have a left of 25%. If we bump that up to 28%, it would cover up that right section. So this all comes back to how responsive you want it. So we'll say that it's going to be 28% on a desktop, and as we get to a smaller screen, we can change this. We can change the percentage to best fit that need. We're not building a responsive site here, but if you are, that's just the idea. So we've got that taken care of. What we're going to do now is when we hover on the navigations, we are going to first show the arrow hovering and then hide the reveal. So let's do that. In navigation.js, if we scroll down a bit to the nav list, we're going to make this class name with the link a motion div. So we can add motion.div, And we don't need to do anything inside our navigation styles because this class name of link isn't a styles component. So we can make the motion components directly in navigation.js. The initial on this motion div is going to have an X set to -108. And this will allow us to push this div to the left 108 pixels. So we do get an error because we haven't defined framer motion. We could say import motion from framer motion. And now if we preview, arrows are gone because we pushed the div to the left. So the idea is when we hover on the links, it's going to push it to the right, showing that arrow. So since we have the initial set, what we could also pass with framer motion is a while hover. And this will allow us to execute a certain animation dependent on when the link is hovered. So with this, we're going to make X be -40. And we're also going to add a transition because I just don't like that springy transition that framer motion automatically has. We're going to give it a duration. We're going to give it a duration of 0.4 and its own custom easing that we've been using, which is 0.6, 0.05, -0.01, and a 0.9. Let's save this, and when we hover on not humble, the arrow pops up. When we hover on bleeping easy, everything just flows perfectly like we want it to. So what we did is we turned the div with the class name of link into a motion component. We set an initial of X -108, which means that before an animation occurs, the X is set to a position of -8 pixels, so to the left. And when we hover, we're setting X to -40, meaning we're pushing it to the right slightly, and then adding some custom duration and easing, which resulted in the arrow popping up like this. Now to make that reveal effect work when we hover, every time we hover, we'll need to update the state to allow us to show the video. So right now, show is automatically set to true. And what we could do is if we go to the reveal, which is down here, we can turn this to a motion component by motion.div. And we can set a conditional here, meaning that it will only animate if the reveal video show in the use state is true. So with animate, we could set the width, and we'll want to set this to 0 if the reveal video show is true. So we can access the state.show. If this is true, we're hiding the reveal, setting the width to 0. If not, we're setting the width back to 100%. So it's automatically going to show the video because the reveal video is set to true. So now you can see that it's actually working. But the idea is that when we hover on these elements, we'll want to update the state. So let's change that instead. Let's set the reveal video back to false, and we'll scroll down to the list item, and we will turn our li to a motion.li. And so with our motion li, we have another property that we could use called onHoverStart, which means that it's sort of like the onMouse enter and onMouse leave. When the hover starts, we'll want to update the state, and when we hover off, we'll want to update the state back to setting it to false. So we could say onHoverStart, and then we'll run an anonymous function, and we'll set reveal video. We'll add show and set that to true. Now, if we save this, it isn't going to work properly because it is going to replace the show to true, but then get rid of video and key. So we need to specify what video and key is. So here, what we can do is for video, we will pass route.video, and for our key, we'll give it a route.id. So this is all coming full circle now because the part where we specified the video and the ID, it will all be specific to whatever we're hovering on. So if we're hovering on 50 beaches, the video state is going to be updated to the route video, which is 50 beaches, or, it takes an island. So everything will be updated depending on what route we're hovering on. We'll want to copy and paste this, except change onHoverStart to onHoverEnd. And we are just returning show from true to false. So let's save that and preview. Let's refresh. So now you'll see if we hover on 50 beaches, you can't really tell because the cursor is red, but when we hover on 50 beaches or any other one, You can see that reveal is staying open, which is good because it's set to true. And also the video is changing depending on what item we're hovering on, because we're updating the state's video source to whichever link we're hovering on. So let's look at the code one more time. Each object has a video path, and every time we hover on a specific list item, the route will then update the state to whatever route video is. And so featured video will no longer be featured video unless we hover on the first one. So it will update dependent on what we're hovering on, which means that if we scroll to the bottom, this video right here is requiring whatever the state's video is. So this is actually good, and I like this a lot, simply because the original build, for example, because it wasn't in React, what it was doing is it had 5 sources of videos and it was just hiding and showing. We only have one, and we're displaying whichever one is needed. So for example, we only have one and we're grabbing and updating the source through the state. So this is good. I like this a lot. The thing that we need to work on is when we switch between the videos, you could see that it isn't smooth and it's just like kind of flashing. What we want to do here is sort of add that opacity effect of fading in and out. And this is where framer motion is extremely powerful, because framer motion has animate presence, which means when a component unmounts from the DOM, we can add an exit animation that will run before unmounting. So that's really, really neat. Let's go ahead and grab video and just cut it out. And then we'll want to add animate presence and then paste video in here. We'll get an error because we need to import animate presence from framer motion. And it automatically did that, so that's cool. But in animate presence, we'll want to add an initial and set that to false. And then we want to pass a prop called exit before enter, which allows us to make a component exit before the next one enters, so that they don't overlap. And then for our video here, we'll turn this into a motion component through motion.video. And what we'll do here is animate presence determines when a component should unmount versus mount based on its key. So if the key is different, it would allow us to run an exit animation. So let's do key, and key will depend on what reveal video.key is, because every time we update the state, we're updating it with the new key and the new video. We'll leave source as it is, and we'll add an initial. We'll set initial's opacity to 0. And we can copy initial again, and we'll change it to exit. So when it exits, we want it to fade out. And then animate, for when it mounts, we're going to set this to an opacity of 1. We can also give it a transition to provide custom duration and easing. So our duration is going to be 0.2, and our ease is actually going to be ease in, ease out, different from what our custom ease we've been using. Let's save this and preview. So when we hover on bleeping easy and then switch to make it 0, nothing happens because we always break stuff. Let's refresh and make sure that nothing's broken. Okay, all we have to do is refresh, so that's good. Let's refresh one more time just to make sure. So hovering on make it 0 and then bleeping easy, perfect. So you can see now it has that fade out animation rather than it being very, very choppy. You can play around with the duration and easing as much as you like. I personally like this because it's pretty smooth. And if we go too fast, it's just going to be kind of black, and then it switch back and forth. I think it's a lot nicer this way, in my opinion. I want to work on this cursor because it is red and I can't see a thing. So we'll work on cursor, and we'll also provide animations to opening and closing the navigation menu. And I think that should do it for the navigation menu. For this cursor, it would require us to update the cursor on a global scale. So when we open the navigation menu, I want to let the cursor know that the navigation menu is opened, and I want it to result in a different look. So let's do that. To make this work, what we'll do is we'll need to open up layout.js, and in layout.js, we'll need to set a state regarding our menu. So we'll do const toggle menu, not toffle, toggle menu, and we'll do set toggle menu. And so initially our toggle menu is going to be set to false. And the only way to change toggle menu is if you select the header hamburger menu. So that means we need to pass toggle menu and set toggle menu as props to our header. So we'll pass toggle menu here, and then we'll pass set toggle menu like so. And we'll also need to do the same thing for our navigation, because when navigation is open, we'll want to close the hamburger menu, and we do have a different button to close. So we'll pass in toggle menu and set toggle menu into navigation component as well. So I'll first work on closing the menu, and then we can work on opening it since it's already opened. First, what we'll do is, since toggle menu is set to false, we'll wrap our navigation dependent on the state of the toggle menu. And since it's false, that means navigation is going to go bye-bye. In navigation.js, scroll to the navigation component, and using destructuring, let's grab toggle menu and let's grab set toggle menu. And what we'll do is let's take our entire nav component, cut it, and then we can use a React fragment. And then inside the React fragment, we'll use animate presence. And inside animate presence, we'll have a conditional. So depending on what toggle menu is, if it's true, we're going to return the nav component. And if it's false, it wouldn't. So let's preview. And toggle is not defined. That's because I just put toggle instead of toggle menu. So let's do toggle menu. Preview now, and it will take us back to the home screen. If we change toggle menu to true, it will then display our navigation. Okay, so the idea here is to have it false, and when we click on that hamburger menu, it will be set to true, and then through animate presence, we can handle animations on mount and unmount, if that makes sense. So since it's set to false, let's work on opening the menu. We can go into header.js, and we're not, are we importing? No, we're only importing on cursor. So we can import set toggle menu, and we'll also need a toggle menu. And the reason we need toggle menu is because we want to determine the opposite of what toggle menu represents when we open or close. That's the whole purpose behind toggle. We can't just set it false or true, because then we can't set it back to the opposite. So scroll down until you find this menu, and we'll write an onClick event handler, pass an anonymous function that will set toggle menu to whatever the opposite of toggle menu currently is. Let's save this, and then when we click on this hamburger menu, it should open up projects or the menu itself. If we click back on this, nothing should happen because we are not updating the state in the navigation.js. We can do the exact same thing that we did through, if we look for close nav, where's that at? Close nav. We can do onClick, anonymous function, set toggle menu to the opposite of whatever toggle menu is. And if we preview what we have, what should happen is that it should open onClick, and then when we close out, it should close, but it doesn't. And the reason is because we are using animate presence already. And while using animate presence, you always need to define an exit and an entrance animation. So getting rid of animate presence here, let's see that if it works. Okay, so it works with opening and closing, but with animate presence, a exit transition and an entrance or an animate transition must be defined. So let's do that. The entrance transitions went from left to right, and then when you close it, it went from right to left. So we can set an initial and have x equal to -100%, and we can copy and paste this and set it for its exit. And then for our animate, we can have x set to 0, but we do need a conditional here. So we can say if the toggle menu is true, we'll set x to 0. If it's false, we'll set x to -100%. This does require us to change the nav to a motion component. So look for nav and turn it to a motion component. So motion.div. Back in our project, if we refresh and open up nav, oh my god, that's awful. But you can see it does work where that x is happening from left to right, and it's opening and closing. And I do believe the component or the navigation component is on mounting so that it can go away if it's not being used. Let's fix that easing because it is just god awful. Let's add a custom transition, set the duration to 0.8, and our ease is going to be 0.6, 0.05, -0.01, and a 0.9. Save that and let's check it out right now. Perfect. So it is much better in my opinion. Cool. So now we determine if we should open or close and if our navigation component is actually active or not too. So now we've allowed the user to open up our navigation and close it. And we've also allowed our cursor to know if our navigation is open or not. So if our navigation is open, we don't want the color of the cursor to be red. We want it to be black or white, depending on what the current theme is. So what we could do is in layout.js, we can look for cursor and we can pass in toggle menu to our cursor. We don't need set toggle menu because we are not updating the state. So if we open up cursor using destructuring, bring in toggle menu, and as an additional class name, we can do the following. We can say if toggle menu is true, we want a nav-open class name added, else we don't want anything added. So now when the navigation is opened, nav open should exist on our cursor, meaning if we go to the global styles, we need to create an additional class name here, one specific to nav-open. And what nav-open is getting is a background change. So the background is going to be this text prop, like so. Let's save this and preview. So now the cursor is red. When we select the hamburger menu, the cursor turns black like we want it to. Okay, perfect. So we also can add the hover effects on the links and on the navigation, and we'll do that through that onCursor function that we'll pass down to the navigation component. So let's do that real quick. In layout.js, we can go to the navigation component and pass in onCursor. Let's open up navigation component and let's bring onCursor in. So when we hover on the close nav, we want to update that. So we can say on mouse enter, pass in anonymous function, and then run on cursor. And the argument that on cursor is going to take is a pointer and on mouse leave. We are just going to return on cursor. So let's save that and then let's preview our project. So what should happen when we hover on close nav, it should allow us to show a hovered animation. We also want the same thing for our list items. So let's do the exact same thing we did with on mouse enter and on mouse leave. And we can drop that on our list item. Let's save this and preview. Perfect. So when we hover, it now indicates to the user that we're hovering on something rather than it being that black square. Another thing I want to show is when we change the color to a dark theme and hover, it turns the cursor to white. So it's based off the theme color. Awesome. So we've got our navigation working, and I think I'm going to draw a conclusion to this video because it is getting very long. We've still got quite ways to go. We still need to add the footer for our navigation. And in the next video, we are going to add all the components related to the home component. And once we've built out the footer, we'll jump back in to our hamburger menu, and then we'll add our footer. We're also missing that lock effect when we hover on the hamburger menu, but we'll add that in towards the end. If you did enjoy this video, please leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe. That truly helps me out, and have a wonderful day.